All right, this weekend, the two major track meets delivered fireworks on opposite sides of the globe, but the Caribbean made sure their presence was felt from Cacao, China to Miramar, Florida. In China, Olympic silver medalist Jereem Thompson narrowly missed out on the top spot in the men's 100 meters, clocking 9.99 seconds to finish runner-up to in-form South African Akani Simbine, who won in 9.98. Fabulous finish coming from Simbine as Thompson tried to hold on, but it wasn't to be. Sharing a smile there. Now, the two-time world 100 hurdles champion Danielle Williams was second in 12.55 behind American Grace Stark's meet record of 12.42. Bahamian Davine Charlton was seventh in a season's best at 12.78. The men's sprint hurdles, just as intense. Olympic bronze medalist Rashid Broadbell ran a season's best at 13.24 for third, with fellow Jamaicans Hansa Parchment and Orlando Bennett finishing 6th and 8th respectively. The win went to American Cordell Tinch at a world-leading 12.87. Another Jamaican, Jordan Scott, leapt 17.00 meters to take second in the triple jump. As we look at Tinch, claimed victory in the 110 hurdles. Now, Grenada's Kirani James finished 5th in the men's 400 meters in 44.94 seconds, while the British Virgin Islands' Karen McMaster was also 5th in the 400 hurdles, won by Karsten Varham in a world-leading 47.28 seconds. And Jamaica's Natoya Gould-Toppin ran a season's best, 1 minute 58.43 for 4th in the women's 800 meters. And in the long jump, the world and Olympic silver medalist Wayne Pinnock of Jamaica placed 3rd with 8.10 meters. The 2019 world champion Tajay Gale was 5th with 8.05. But the cash and the headlines rolled in from Miramar, Florida at the Grand Slam track meet, where performances didn't just bring pride, they brought prize money. On her birthday weekend, Jamaica's Akira Nugent stormed to an 11.09 win in the 100 meters and US $100,000 for the short sprint hurdles category. Right behind her was Megan Tapper with a personal best 11.33 and US $30,000 for finishing 3rd overall, having, of course, finished 4th in the 100 hurdles a couple of days earlier. Trinidad and Tobago's Jereem Richards doubled down, winning the men's long sprint category and the US $100,000 prize. He won Friday's 200 in 19.86 before finishing 2nd over 400 meters in 44.32. The Jamaicans Oblique Seville and Anjanette Knight both collected $50,000 for runner-up finishes in the men's short sprint and women's long hurdles categories, while the Dominican Republic's Marilady Paulino torched the 200, a national record. She ran 22.30 and walked away with US $100,000 of her own for winning the women's long sprints, having won the 400 meters on Friday's opening day. All right, let's get Leighton Levy in on this discussion. And Leighton, I want to start with the Diamond League, and I want to start with Jereem Thompson and his season opener in the 100 meters, beaten by Akani Simbine, who has been in fabulous form since winning bronze at the World Indoor Championships. Leighton, first of all, were you surprised by the result?
Yes and no. Yes, because given how Jereem started that race and was leading right up to about 70 meters before he was caught, I think maybe because we're spoiled by that 9.7 last year, we kind of come to expect these extraordinary performances, notwithstanding the fact that this was his season opener. But when you step back and look at it objectively, Simbine training and preparing in South Africa, as you know, Ricardo, is a completely different season to the western side of the world. So he's not a lot better race. I mean, he's a lot more race sharp than Jereem is. So when you put those two things together, you're not really surprised that Akani won that race because he's a lot sharper than Kishen is. But notwithstanding that, you're kind of thinking that because Kishen is that much faster, that he probably should have won that race on Saturday.
Yeah, I see some individuals making comparisons to the Olympic final where Noah Lyles came through on the outside to snatch it ahead of Thompson, who probably led at about 80-85 meters in the Olympic final as well. From your standpoint, Leighton, do you think he has an issue with finishing these races?
No, I think it's too small a sample. It happened at the Olympics, yes, and that may have been a condition of nerves and maybe some injury issue that he had in the semifinals. I wouldn't use this as an example because I think what we've seen from Kishen Thompson, he had a very competitive final of the national championships with Oblique Seville, and he came through that pretty comfortably. I think for him, he's still learning his race model. I think he's still learning the event itself. And I think what we're seeing is the learning process occurring. And I think by the time the World Championships come around in September, he probably would have a greater handle on what he needs to do in the different phases of his race and ultimately succeed.
Yeah. Before we continue to talk about these athletes and their performances, Leighton, not just at the Diamond League but at the Grand Slam track, the World Championships in September, it's the first time since Doha 2019 that we've had a September World Championship. And I know coaching technique and the science of getting athletes to peak would have been upgraded over time. So there is no fear really that you can find ways to sustain an athlete's form, peak form, for different parts of the year. But how much do you think the late World Championship this year impacts on how athletes will measure themselves throughout the season?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Lance, because I was talking to a couple of coaches during the course of the weekend, and it actually just this afternoon. And the consensus is that coaching models haven't really changed to accommodate this season. I mean, I think perhaps in April we saw some of the athletes at the Grand Slam track here in Kingston not looking particularly sharp, but they're significantly, well, incrementally better in Miami. But we are in May now, so that's a month removed. So I think what we're seeing is a progression towards the peak levels that we're kind of expecting as the summer approaches, and of course leading up into the World Championships in September. What is surprising, though, is the performance of Tia Jones and, of course, Masai Russell. 12.17 second fastest all the time, 12.19 third fastest all the time. But when you look at, for example, Akira Nugent and, of course, Stacey Ann Williams and Nikisha Price and even the British runner, Amber Anning, they're all in the same camp. And you would notice that they're running really pretty much similar times, which tells you that the coaches are not really adjusting their programs to accommodate the Grand Slam track, but are preparing for the longer term, of course, in September. When I spoke to Lennox Graham earlier this year, before the Grand Slam track season even started, he said that the primary focus this year would be the World Championships in September, and they were only signed up for the first Grand Slam track. And of course, subsequently, we've seen her race, Danielle race in 2 meets in China, which suggests that the program is progressing the way they want to, with the ultimate focus being on September. So what we're seeing right now is maybe a little bit of alteration earlier this year, early April, but as of now, I think everything is status quo, where it used to be, where it's going to be for the remainder of the season leading up to the World Championships. Because as much as money is being on the table for a lot of these athletes now, the ultimate goal is still the World Championships in September.
All right, yeah, well, we're going to talk about the Grand Slam track, but let's just finish off with the Diamond League, because you had spoken about Kishen and you just referenced Masai Russell's 12.17, which was pretty fast. Grace Stark was significantly slower at the Diamond League meet in China at 12.42, and Danielle Williams chased her to the finish. Your thoughts on Danielle's performance? She was a fast finisher in her previous race, which she won. She was closing on Saturday, but not fast enough.
Well, what we saw, I think, was pretty much what we expected. You know, she said she's been working on the first parts of her race and, of course, the last part of her race, which is usually the stronger side of her race. But if you remember, in the first meet in Yemen, she clipped the last hurdle, which I think cost her the victory over Danielle in that race. This time she was a lot cleaner. And as you know, Grace Stark trains with Grant Holloway, so they seem to be on a similar program in terms of their progress during the course of the season. But for both, and you mentioned, you know, more specifically Danielle, I think she's where she wants to be. I think when you look at the fact that this is perhaps the fastest she's opened in any given season, 12:53, and of course now 12:55, she's right within that wheelhouse of where she wants to be as the season progresses, because I think part of the plan, of course, is to compete at the Diamond Leagues, and of course the national championships come up in just about 2 months' time. So it suggests that she's moving in the right direction. Her trajectory is where both she and Lennox Graham would want it to be. So I thought it was a pretty solid performance. And of course, a win in a second place, I don't think she can complain about that in terms of performances. She comes home with a couple of victories, which will have helped her confidence a lot. And of course, helped her to then now focus on what's to come for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, Leighton, let's talk about Grand Slam track then, because the second meet in the series took place at the weekend in Miramar, Florida. My first question on this one, Leighton, and you know, whenever I have a question like this, I always have to be careful because I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm trying to say. But the fact is, Leighton, when you look at the times across the board, at Grand Slam track in Miramar, Florida, at the weekend, you have to have some questions. You're talking about 12:17 and 12:19 in the sprint hurdles. You spoke about those. And athletes were just running personal bests and national records and world-leading performances left, right, and center. And I just want to know, well, before I ask you, I also recall that at that very track, and Claremont in Florida is also one of the other venues where you consistently get these amazingly fast times. And so usually when meets are held at these venues, I usually say to myself, Leighton, okay, I see you, I see the time, but listen, until you do it somewhere else, I am not marking it as that. I don't know how you feel about the venue and the performances that you saw in Miramar at the weekend.
For Claremont, I share your views on Claremont because Claremont is one of those tracks where the extraordinary seems to happen quite frequently. But the track in Miramar, I'm told, because I reached out to some people on the ground there on the weekend, is that track was relayed last year, so it's still it's a pretty much brand new track. That's one thing. And the second thing, I think that the conditions in Miramar usually are very receptive to fast running. I'm not going to say it's the same as in Claremont, which is an open field kind of situation in Claremont. But Anson is one of those tracks where I guess it's just one of those dynamics, like National Stadium in Kingston, where you know fast times are run there as well. The thing is this: when you look at what has been happening, Ricardo, I think what we're seeing is improvements in coaching, understanding of the individual athletes, better nutrition, better recovery, you know, and of course the running shoes that the athletes are using these days. All of these, I think, have contributed to, you know, these extraordinary. Well, I wouldn't say extraordinary, but certainly, you know, better performances than we would normally expect. I mean, you look at what has happened traditionally over the sprints in the last 10, 15 years, and not even then. So let's go back to 2007 when Bolt retired, 2017. We've seen pretty fast times that from athletes who normally don't run those times, male and female. So I suspect that some of the equipment that's being used, and of course the running surfaces, are helping in terms of some of these performances that we've seen. And of course we saw that in Paris last year with some of the extraordinary times that we saw as the Olympics progressed. You saw faster and faster times.
But the difference is, Leighton, at the Olympic Games, athletes are at their peak. You don't expect athletes to be at their peak in the month of May, and especially early May.
And which is what I was coming to. The thing is this, as I mentioned, improvements in athlete nutrition and, of course, recovery and everything, I think helps with that as well. And it is one of the reasons why I actually think there are a couple of world records that are under threat this year, especially the sprint hurdles, because I would suspect that in early May, you would not expect anyone to run 12.17 and 12.19. But this is something that Atto and I have been talking about for about a year now, that the 12.12 that we saw in Oregon, that many people thought was unbelievable back in 2022, is very much within reach. Because even look at the Akira Nugent, 12.34. I mean, she ran 12.67 in Jamaica, I think it was. And she said she was tired coming back from World Indoors in China. I know she's fresh, and she's run 12.34, and I know for a fact that she's not anywhere close to being tapered for anything other than just competing on the circuit. So I think it's a combination of many things. I mean, I'm not going to say that your suspicions about Claremont are unfounded, but what I'm saying is that, Miramar, sorry. What I'm saying is that I think what we're seeing is a combination of many things that is resulting in improved times that we've seen.
All right, here's what we're going to do, Leighton Levy. We're going to do a research, and at the end of the season, we're going to take every single performance from the Miramar Grand Slam, and we are going to check those performances against what the athletes do going forward this season, and we're going to find a percentage for the number of athletes who improved on their times from the Miramar meet at any other point of the season, including when they should be at peak at their nationals, speaking specifically to the Jamaican and American athletes there, and also when they should be at peak at the World Championships. Quickly, Leighton, Jereem Richards, congratulations to him. He won the Grand Slam in the long sprints, the 200 and the 400 meters, won the 200, finished second in the 400 meters. One of the things he said at the end of his 400 race is that it's the first time in his career where he feels he's at a point where he's equal at both 200 and 400 meters, and he isn't sure which of the two events he should be taking on at the World Championships later on this year. Do you have any advice for him?
Boy, Ricardo, that's a tough one, because 43.78 last year, 44.32 in May, 1986. Jereem is probably at his peak right now in terms of his own development. And I think it's very exciting for him, because when you're unable to decide which of two events you're going to pick. Remember, Jereem has accomplished a lot, two-time Commonwealth champion. He ran a 43 split back in 2017 as part of Trinidad's 4x4 team that won gold at the World Championships in London. He's been doing this for a long time, but this is perhaps the most consistent he's been at these very elite levels. 19.86 was for 24 hours the fastest time in the world this year, and it's close to his personal best as well. So, what I would suggest him, because I'm not quite sure he's going to be challenged at any national championships in Trinidad, I think he'll probably wait until maybe mid-June before he decides where he wants to go in terms of the 402, because right now he's pretty equal at both, and it's an exciting time for him. But I think if he can get to 43 by summer, June, I'm talking about June, July, I'd go for the 4. But because the 200 is going to be very much more difficult to win with Tebogo and, of course, Kenny Bednarek and, of course, Noah Lyles. I think the 400 probably gives him a better opportunity for a medal.
Yeah, I like the 400 for him as well, but again, it's still so early in the season. And by the way, Leighton Levy, I don't want you to disrespect my friend. You forgot his World Indoor 400 title, and you also forgot his World Championship medal at 200 meters. How could you, Leighton Levy? How dare you?
I'm getting old, my friend, getting old.
You're not getting old, Leighton. You're old. Let's go to a break on the SportsMax Zone. So much more to come. Lads?
Yeah.
Talking about old, of course.